Chers collègues,
Dear colleagues, please take your seats. A minute of silence.
merci. Veuillons nous en...
Thank you very much. Please take your seats. The meeting is called to order.
Chers collègues,
Dear colleagues, in conformity with our rules of procedure, I'm going to invite to the chamber Mr. André Matt. Mr. André Boumel is invited to come into the chamber. Is he in the chamber? Dear colleagues, good morning. I would like to greet and recognize the presence amongst us of the interpreters and the members of the media. I hope that you've had a good rest, and I have invited Mr. Boumel to get into the chamber. If he is in the chamber, could he please come forward? The agenda of the day of the proceedings is starting. I would like to invite Mr. Clark to read out to us the first item of the agenda. Please.
The first item is communication from the chair.
I've already made my communication.
Then we'll proceed to administration of oath.
What?
Swearing in.
Yes, you have the floor. L'ordre du jour appelle.
Please, Mr. Clark, you have the floor. The administration of oath.
Mr. President, honorable members, today we have one candidate for the administration of oath from the DRC, Senator Pierre
Not DRC,
Ngolo.
Congo Brazzaville.
From Congo, Senator Pierre Ngolo.
L'ordre du jour appelle.
The agenda is on the second. We're coming to the second item of the agenda. I would like to invite His Excellency Mr. the Senator Pierre Ngolo to come and take the oath.
Moi,
I, Pierre Ngolo, member of the Pan-African Parliament, hereby swear solemnly, declare that before God and the African peoples, to perform my functions as member of the Pan-African Parliament to the best of my ability and with honor and dignity in the service of the peoples of Africa. I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the African Union and will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitutive Act of the African Union and the protocol to the treaty establishing the African Economic Community relating to the Pan-African Parliament as by law established. And I will promote adherence to the principles of good governance, democracy, human rights, international humanitarian law, peace, stability, and all objectives of the Pan-African Parliament. So help me God. I so affirm done at Midrand, Johannesburg on the 11th of October 2017.
Thank you, honorable members.
Dear colleagues, I would like to inform you that Honorable Pierre Ngolo was among the founding members of the Pan-African Parliament. He left and he's coming back today, not only as a member of the Pan-African Parliament, but also as President of the Senate of Congo. This is to tell you that we have eminent persons among ourselves. Thank you. Dear colleagues, in conformity with the provisions of our rules of procedure, I would like to invite Mr. Andrea Pasfomel, Secretary General for the United Nations Campaign for Parliamentary Assembly, to come and present to us his message of solidarity. Thank you. You have the floor, sir.
Your Excellency, the Right Honorable President Rajan Kododang, members of the Bureau, distinguished members of the European Parliament, distinguished guests, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure and privilege to address you today at this session of the Pan-African Parliament. I am speaking to you as the Secretary General and co-founder of the International Campaign for a United Nations Parliamentary Assembly. Almost exactly 10 years ago, just 6 months after the campaign was launched, the Pan-African Parliament took on a pioneering role and adopted a resolution in support of a UN Parliamentary Assembly. The reasoning was straightforward. Namely, if democracy is a key to improve national governance, it must also be a reliable way to improve the governance of international organizations. PAP recalled that the Charter of the United Nations was declared in the name of "We the Peoples." According to PAP, this reference invokes the principle of democracy and roots the legitimacy of the United Nations in the will of the peoples of its member states. In fact, the UN itself, as you know, has determined that democracy belongs to its universal core principles. However, you will search in vain for an effective mechanism that allows for citizen representatives to play a role in the World Organization. All democracies have elected parliaments, and indeed almost all regional international organizations have parliamentary bodies too. It is time that the United Nations embarks on this goal as well. As PAP rightfully pointed out in another resolution that you adopted in May last year, a UN Parliamentary Assembly is necessary to establish democratic participation and representation of the world's citizens at the United Nations. A UNPA could be created by the UN General Assembly as a consultative body according to Article 2 of the UN Charter. As an initiative of the General Assembly of the United Nations, no big power veto could be exercised. This means that it would be easier for the United Nations to create a consultative parliamentary assembly than do any change to the Security Council, the latter of which requires an amendment of the Charter and is subject to veto. Initially, a UNPA could be composed of elected representatives of national parliaments and regional bodies, such as PAP or the European Parliament. Direct elections of the delegates should also be an option. We believe that citizens, parliaments, member states, and the UN alike would benefit from a UNPA in many ways. For example, consider the Agenda 2030. A UNPA would create a formal connection between the UN and parliaments. On the one hand, parliaments are necessary partners to implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. On the other, a UNPA would complement the high-level political forum in providing the necessary oversight and accountability and help maintain global momentum in pursuit of the Agenda 2030. Your Right Honourable Excellency President Dang, members of the Bureau, distinguished members of the Pan-African Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, in 2020, the United Nations will celebrate its 75th anniversary. This will be a good opportunity to put reform proposals, such as a UNPA, onto the agenda. In 2 resolutions, PAP has already declared its support for a UNPA. Last year, PAP called on the African Union and its member states to initiate an intergovernmental process at the UN for establishing a UNPA. Indeed, now is the right time, in our opinion, to start preparing the ground for 2020. And it is our hope that PAP and Africa will continue to play a pioneering role in this project. Mr. President, allow me to conclude by thanking you, the members of the Bureau, the Honourable Member Yvonne Suarez, which is our liaison here at PAP, and Bernadette Lahaye, as a member of the Bureau, for the good collaboration so far. We look forward to continuing to work with the Pan-African Parliament and its honourable members to advance our common goal of a more democratic and representative United Nations. It is a big honour to be here. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Andreas Boomer. The agenda now calls for the message of the Director General of FAO. I would like to grant 1 minute to Dr. Lai in order to present to us the content of this video film. Thank you. Dr. Lai, you have the floor to introduce the content of the video of the Director General of the FAO.
Monsieur le secrétaire général, préparez la...
Mr. Clark, could you please prepare the video film? Is it ready?
You need to speak. Yes, you have the floor.
Mr. President, members of the Bureau, distinguished honorable members of the Pan-African Parliament, this week starts the 1-week-long Committee conference in Rome on the World Food Summit. This week, we also mark the important role that the FAO is playing in ending hunger, malnutrition in the world. And on Monday, no less a person than one of Africa's illustrious former president, President Kufuor of Ghana, who was awarded the best president for achieving Millennium Goal Development 1 and 2, that is ending hunger, gave a keynote address in Rome on the role of Africa in ending hunger. So we are very pleased this week, while we are here in Rome, all our ministers of agriculture and our heads of state are discussing this very important issue of food security, nutrition in Africa. We are pleased to present to you a short video of the Director General of the FAO for his message to the Pan-African Parliament and the role that the Pan-African Parliament is expected to play. Thank you.
That video.
Members of the Pan-African Parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, I cannot join you in person today. I applaud your commitment to advance food security and nutrition in Africa. According to the State of Food Security and Nutrition 2017 that FAO just launched, Africa faces the coexistence of several forms of malnutrition. 1 child out of 3 is still stunted. At the same time, there are rising levels of overweight and obesity. FAO is supporting African countries to transform food systems in order to be more nutrition sensitive. And we will reinforce this agenda with the Memorandum of Understanding between FAO and the Pan-African Parliament. Let me highlight that legislation is fundamental to ensure food security policies and frameworks. Securing research allocation is also very important. So you are critical partners in this fight, given the legislative, budgetary, and policy oversight roles of parliamentarians. FAO will continue to support you as you adopt national policies and develop legislation to guarantee access to food for all. This is fundamental to achieve the goals of the Malabo Declaration and of the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development. I look forward to the outcomes of your deliberations. Thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Pursued by the Pan-African Parliament and also those of our Committee on Agriculture, and members will take into consideration your speech and will suggest actions. We have an expert who will support this committee in order for us not to die of hunger. The last message is that the 7th of October is the International Day for the Girl and Child, and since we're holding a conference on women as of tomorrow, I would like us to show briefly a small video on the girl child. Could you proceed, Mr. Clark, in showing this video? Thank you.
became a woman.
Are you going to defer to one of us, or was you just going to...
It's going to sound terribly stereotypical, but I think it's when I started cooking. Like, I love cooking.
I became a woman when I got my first cell phone.
It was when I started living on my own.
When I got my first paycheck.
When I had responsibilities.
I became a woman when I could speak my mind. When I took the train by myself.
I became a woman when I conquered my biggest fear.
Isn't it the day you get your period?
When I said I do.
When I graduated from university.
I became a woman when I became a mother.
This is my whole life. This little one over here. When I learned to stand up for myself.
When I realized I'm enough just as I am.
The day I became a woman was the day they cut me.
Then he told us, today we're going to be circumcised.
Ils m'ont attaché à un arbre et je me suis mis à courir.
I cried, but nobody was there in the forest.
For 2 weeks, they kept my legs tied together.
By cutting me, they were telling me I'm not good enough.
Everybody's really committed in trying to do something, but it has to be more coordinated perhaps, and perhaps encourage dialogue and communication between and amongst communities. And I think this is one of the good things about this forum, in that the parliamentarians who are the link, a strong link between policy and communities are in this room.
One of the things is to ensure that we have laws in place that can deal with the harmful practices, and if the laws are in place and they are not being implemented, it is also good as a parliamentarian to sit down and analyze why those laws are not implemented and where is the deadlock.
The language is very important, the sort of terminologies that we use. We also look at who are the forefront of fighting these issues.
We explored activities and examples in different countries, particularly African countries, and we also got information from our partners in other countries like Finland, England, etc., who are presently getting an influx of refugees from developing countries who incidentally are transporting these practices into those countries.
The role of parliamentarians from countries across the world is to take a lead both in ensuring that the laws are sufficiently robust and are implemented, but also to understand the different cultures, backgrounds, and to be recognizing when achievements have been made.
It is very important to come up with an intervention to ensure that these harmful practices which are taking place in many countries are actually gone to an end. As a member of parliament, I believe you have got a very important role.
This is really a violation of young girls and is completely unacceptable in our society.
The role of parliamentarians is to fight against mutilations, genital mutilations, and against all discriminations against women, because the Member of Parliament is the one who votes laws and who should control the action of the government. A motion in conformity with the rules of procedure of Article 60. We have had a request for motion which calls for preventing Chadians from the United States of America. I would like to invite Madame Traoré to present this motion, to table this motion. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. A motion calling for the lifting of the prevention of Chadians from getting into the United States of America. It is with great surprise that Chad and the international community have learned through international press their prevention of getting into the territory of the United States of America in implementation of the presidential decree 1386 of the 6th of March 2017, because they do not share adequately the information relative to public security and terrorism in Africa. Chad is one of the countries whose commitment in the fight against terrorism is hailed throughout the world. Indeed, Chad is strongly involved in the fight against the terrorist group Boko Haram, which is now committing crimes around the neighboring countries. Chad is involved in the multinational force, that of G5 Sahel. Chad hosts today the quarters of the Bakar operation. To this, we must add the cooperation between the United States and Chad, thanks to which trains forces of defense the necessary training. Chad has paid for its commitment through losses of human lives and financial and material losses. And based on that, the administration of the United States cannot rightly invoke any lack of cooperation in order to justify this decree. In conformity with Article 60 of the Rules of Procedure of the Pan-African Parliament, I would like to submit the present motion to the president of this august institution in order to request the adoption by the plenary of a resolution calling for the lifting of this measure, presented by Honorable Sékou Traoré and seconded by Honorable Mouget. Thank you, Mr. President. I, Honorable Fatali from the Sahrawi Republic, second this motion. The motion will be inserted in the proceedings of our proceedings of the agenda of Monday 16. Mr. Clark, I would like to give you the floor to read out to us the first item of the agenda of our proceedings, please.
Oui, motion d'ordre.
A point of order. Thank you, Mr. President. Yesterday, during one of the statements, my name was mentioned, as well as during the meeting of the Conference of Presidents. You had all the time to make a statement and give your version. So I'd like to also express my own views. So I'd like to also proceed as you did yesterday. So I'd like to voice my opinion on the mission to the USA, during which you claimed that I waged a campaign. First of all, I'd like to say that I distributed no document to the Wilson Center. I gave no document whatsoever to the Wilson Center. Mr. President, Mr. President, Mr. President, please.
Praise is that this debate was concluded yesterday. All members were given an opportunity to ask a further round of questions after your intervention, and the report has already been adopted. So for the honourable member to now seek an opportunity to make a declaration is out of order. I so submit.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I'd like to continue. Well, your point of order has been rejected. No, Mr. President. Your point of order has been rejected. Excuse me, I have the right to defend my views, Mr. President. It has been rejected. Mr. President, you have already accepted. Please sit down. No, Mr. President, I would like to express my view in the plenary just like you. It's not normal for a parliamentarian to be persecuted by you and who has no right to defend himself. This is not normal. And for this reason, I would like to tell my dear colleagues that it is the African Union has asked for my CV. And I sent my CV, which was not opened. I sent them a second CV. The second CV, which I sent, unfortunately, in accordance with our rules of procedure, I would like to invite our friend to sit down. A point of order, please. Point of order, please.
Oui. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. This institution that we call the Pan-African Parliament is a continental parliament which needs to be respected. We do have our rules of procedure, which is our constitution, so that is our reference. And as a parliamentarian elected by the people, we owe respect to those who have voted us in. And thus, when there is a problem that comes up, and that in the Bureau, based on a point of order, they say that the motion has been rejected. I don't know why the parliamentarian is insisting on talking. I think the President has to take his responsibility for our rules of procedure to be respected. I have the right to speak before the Bureau because I was absent. There were two points of order. If you don't want to sit down, I will enforce the rules of our. I will ask the security to please, distinguished security officer, can you escort the MP out of this chamber? Please, security, can you come in and escort the parliamentarian out? Democratically, I have the right to defend myself. You have no right to say what you want and make false allegations against me. This is the file that has been given to the Wilson Center.
Merci beaucoup, chers collègues. Comme vous êtes assis, merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Mr. Clark, please continue.
The next order of business is presentation and debate on the report of the Committee on Audit and Public Accounts for October 2017.
J'invite l'honorable.
I'd like to invite Honorable Guy Fortune Karambera, the chairperson of the committee, to submit his report.
Hein? Le vice-président de la commission.
The deputy chairperson of this committee, is he not in the chamber? Please go ahead and present the report.